Hello and welcome to the Mind, Body, Spirit Network's weekly High Vibe Tribe expert interview, where every week we like to bring in experts on a wide variety of topics on the mind, body, spirit transformation realm. And we partner with the Shift Network in doing this, in that they have weekly online events that invite you deeper into the topic with their subject experts. And today we have a guest that is going to talk about a little bit about highly sensitive persons, and then we're going to dive into being an empath and what that's all about. So let me just ask you a few questions, because not necessarily everyone may have a feeling that they're different than another. And I think the science on this, Tree, is that like 20% of the population is this, a highly sensitive person or empath. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that sounds right.
All right. So hold tight. Let me just kind of pique your interest a little with some questions. So, do your emotions easily overwhelm you, maybe even for days, and sometimes you even feel others' emotions as if they're your own? Are you often drained energetically with your strong feelings, a seeming deterrent to living your life freely, fully, and joyfully? Empaths feel deeply and strongly, and you know if you're one of these highly sensitive souls, or maybe you don't know it. Yet experiencing life as a constant struggle needn't be your fate. In fact, you can even learn to transmute your overpowering and uncomfortable feelings into potent energies to be used for good. So I'd like to introduce you all today to our subject matter expert on this, Miss Tree Franklyn. And Tree, welcome. Thank you for joining us today.
Hi, Liz. Thank you for having me.
My pleasure, my dear. And Tree's coming to us from the mountains of Southern California. And I'm in the mountains of Colorado, so it's kind of fun. We're mountain women. So let me just tell you a little bit about Tree. She's a co-author of the #1 best-selling Amazon books, 365 Ways to Connect with Your Soul. I'd like maybe just 10 would get me started, Tree. She is also founder of the website Find Your Inner Happy. I mean, that name alone is like, sign me up. And with her whimsical muse, Stick Girl, you need to tell us all about Stick Girl, Tree.
Well,
all right. She helps highly sensitive, introverted women manage their overwhelming emotions so they can use their sensitive traits to stop hiding and start creating the life that they want. She's been featured in the HuffPost, the Elephant Journal, Mike Dooley's TUT. What's that stand again for? I forget what that stands for. I know it.
I don't know. I did know at one point, but I don't remember what it stands for right now.
It's like something like messages from the universe or something like that.
Yeah, I'm not sure.
Okay. She's also been featured in Positive Thinking Magazine, Inspired Coach Magazine, Mind Body Green, Entrepreneur on Fire, and more. She's also featured as a quiet revolutionary in Susan Cain's Quiet Revolution. All right, what's that all about? And then we'll ask you questions. The Quiet Revolution, Tree, what's that?
Yeah, so Susan Cain, who wrote the book about introverts, it's called Quiet. She has a website, I think it's quietrevolution.com.
Okay.
And she features introverts who write, I've written a blog post for them, a guest post on their website. And so they feature them as quiet revolutionaries. And I wrote an article, I think, about birthdays, how I just don't like the attention of birthdays. So I spend my birthday every year just because of all the attention that people give me. So I wrote an article about birthdays and they published it, and then they put me as a quiet revolutionary on their website.
Nice. That's a great topic. I would have never known that. I guess I'm not an introvert on my birthday. I don't need to celebrate it, but anyway. So Tree, I read your story about how this all began. Would you like to share your story on like how you start? Well, first of all, who do you help now? And then we'll talk about how you became where you are, how you got to where you are today.
Yep. I help sensitive souls and empaths, mainly women. I started my website for women just because I can talk about being a woman and being sensitive. And I think men have different struggles being sensitive in this male, alpha male world. So I don't really understand those struggles from a male point of view, because it is, they have similar struggles being sensitive, but it's very different in this world. Men have to be strong and macho, and you can't cry. And I don't understand what that's like to be a man and that's a lot of pressure. Just being a woman is a lot of pressure, being sensitive. But so I started this website mainly for women. I've gathered quite a following of men. And I've actually coached a few men in their sensitivity. I started I started the website mainly for women, just because I feel like I can understand their story. And as a woman being sensitive, that's what I can write about, because that's what I know. And so I would never write about something I don't know, which is being a male in this world, especially in the Western society, having to be sensitive and hide that. So I help mainly women, a few men, and I totally appreciate the men who insert their points of views on my writing. I think that's great. So mostly women, I help them manage their overwhelming emotions and get in touch with the deeper calling within them, so that they can find purpose and meaning in their lives.
Nice. Now, you had a bit of a struggle as a teenager, I read. Would you like to share that?
I had a huge struggle, I guess, well into my 30s.
Oh, yeah.
I'm in my late 40s now, but I got to tell you, only in the last decade have I really been able to find myself. I'm still, finding parts of myself, but only into my 40s, in the last decade, have I really been able to step into my own power. I was diagnosed as manic depressive syndrome when I was in my 20s, which is now they call bipolar disorder. I just felt the whole world in me. I felt all the sorrow and the pain and the sadness of the whole world, just viscerally in my whole body. And there was really no help for somebody like me. They just called it depression.
Right.
They didn't have a name for it. They just called it, you're just depressed and you're taking things too deeply and you need to toughen up. And I knew that there was something more than just that, because I had tried to toughen up, but then I'd become cold and distant and not myself. So to me, people were telling me, you're too sensitive, you need to toughen up. So to me, it was either black or white. I can't be sensitive anymore. Now I have to toughen up. And being sensitive was too hard, and toughening up was also too hard, because neither of them felt
your nature to toughen.
Yeah,
right.
Yeah, you just feel like somebody different. You don't feel like yourself anymore. And so it was just a challenge to try to find out for myself what to do. I never took any of the antidepressant drugs, which I'm not against. If you need it, I'm not against that. But I never took, my doctor's orders to get onto drugs and try to get out of this manic depressive disorder that he talked about. I didn't really agree with that either. So I just started studying and researching and meditating. I forced myself to meditate every day, even though I didn't want to, and even though it was horrible. I forced myself to meditate at first, and eventually I just sort of came to understand who I am and why I am. I discovered the term highly sensitive person, and that helped me to know that I'm not alone. And just knowing that you're not the only weird one in this world, just knowing that there's actually a scientific research done about it. There's actually evidence for me being the way that I am, and that there are other people, 20% of the population are like that. That's like 1.4 million people. So it made me feel like I'm not so alone, and I'm not crazy, and I'm not an alien that came from another planet, just plopped me here somewhere in the wrong place at the wrong time. So that's kind of how I came to where I am now, which is finding your own inner happy, and discovering, all the joy and all the answers that I really wanted were inside me, and I just needed to go within instead of look out there.
Right. So it's so interesting, Tree. I had an interview with Jean Shinoda Bolin. Are you familiar with her?
No.
She's a shift network psychologist. She's like a Carl Jungian archetypal psychologist, or psychiatrist. I forget which. Anyway, she's brilliant. But we spoke about the divine feminine. She works with women. And there's 7 Greek goddesses that have archetypal energies. And she's like, if you're of a dominant type, like what you're talking about, others that aren't are going to be suck it up and toughen it up. we had this conversation, and she's like, you can't expect people that for whom it's not their nature to do that, and it makes it worse. So she's like, you've got to recognize, and she as a psychiatrist could recognize the patterns of like, all right, this is not how you treat someone who's highly sensitive. You don't treat them like everybody else.
Right.
So it was kind of further validation or confirmation that there's other things going on and that we're all not the same. Thank God.
Right. Right. And I think that's the main, part. My dad used to tell me to toughen up all the time. And I think part of that is, as a trained psychiatrist, you understand that, but as a normal, a person who's not trained in the psyche of it, I think for people who see sensitive people, especially some, people you love, and you see them crying because they're hurting so deeply about something, I feel like the intention is pure. The intention is really to try to help that person. And because, for example, my dad, he didn't know how to help me because I was so sensitive and he didn't understand it. And so his way of trying to help me is, hey, you got to toughen up so that you're not hurt so much. So I feel like the intention may be very pure for people who tell sensitive souls to toughen up and suck it up and, tough it out. But I don't feel like the practicality of that is there. But I do feel like most of the time the intention is very pure. They really are trying to help.
Oh, for
They
sure.
just don't know how to do it. Maybe toughen up for them works. But
yes.
For sensitive souls, it doesn't.
Right. Well, we're all evolving and understanding these things. And eventually someone wouldn't say toughen up. It'd be like, how can I help you? What do you need from me or whatever? Who knows? Okay. So how did you start? So tell us about your work and how you got started with this.
Yeah, so I basically started with a blog. I was just writing for the Huffington Post, and I was submitting guest posts here and there. And it was really about, my website was not necessarily for empaths or sensitive souls. It was really just, I feel like no matter who you are, we all, especially in the Western society, we look externally for our happiness. We look for that promotion, or we look for the bigger house, or we look for the marriage, or we look for the mate, or the children, or we're always looking externally, which totally makes sense because all of our commercials that we see and are bombarded with all the marketing is, do this, buy this, get this, and then you'll be happy. So we're sort of brainwashed in a way to look externally. So my website was actually just started for people to try to turn people inward and find that happiness within, because that's the real lasting happiness. And then I started discovering a pattern with my readers. That I did some surveys to find out who are these people that are coming to me, subscribing to my website, and who are they? I don't know who they are, and I wanted to get to know them. So I did a survey, and it turned out that a lot of them had the same similarities with sensitivity, and a lot of them were emotionally overwhelmed. Their number one struggle was not knowing what to do with their emotions because they feel so much. And so then I sort of, my website just sort of took a turn to focus on sensitive souls and empaths and highly sensitive people, so that I can sort of have a focus to help those people. And that's how I started with this emotional work.
Nice. So was it called Find Your Inner Happy when it was the blog?
Yes.
It hasn't changed. It's been the same name.
Yes.
Yeah. So it's kind of, I'm a marketing person, Tree. I help people like you with their online marketing. So I do research. And I'm like, and one of my research terms is, I looked up if people are interested in how to be happy. It's a huge search term, like well over 50,000 searches a month on some derivative of how to be happy, like how to be happy with yourself, your life, whatever. So you're onto something. People care. Of course, we want to be happy. I mean, that's, but specifically, there's interest there. So you've started working with individuals, like one-on-one. Did you start doing that?
So I started working with, coaching clients one-on-one. At some point, I knew that I couldn't reach because of time. You only have 24 hours a day.
Yeah.
Because of time constraints, when you work one-on-one with a person, obviously there's just one person, which is great. And I love helping people on an intimate level. But I realized that I couldn't reach as many people because there's only a certain amount of hours that I can do one-on-ones.
Yeah.
So then I started doing group coaching.
Oh.
Which is also fantastic. There are two different two whole different beasts. One, when you work one-on-one, you have somebody who really, you can, pull out the nitty gritty and there's nobody else around and they get to trust you, and you can open them up in ways that you really can't in a group setting because there are other people there.
Right.
And you don't really know who they are and what's going to be shared, so they're two completely different things. But with group coaching, I found that I could reach more people. And then even that, for me, I still really wanted to reach more people. And so I created an online course.
Oh, nice.
And so that was based on what I learned in my group coaching and my one-on-one coaching, what people really need.
Yeah.
So then I created an online course, which I put up on my website, and that can reach, because it's digital, it's however many people want to buy it, they can buy it.
Oh, nice. What's the name of that course, Tree?
It's called Emotional Resilience.
Oh.
How to toughen up without losing your soft, sensitive side.
All right. So I think we should talk about your kind of beginning with highly sensitivity, working, focused on that, and transitioning into empaths, and what you see that as the difference between HSPs and empaths, and why now you're kind of heading down the empath journey.
Yeah. When I discovered Elaine Aron, she wrote a book called The Highly Sensitive Person. When I discovered what a highly sensitive person is, I think she wrote this in the 90s, if I'm correct.
I think that's right. Yeah.
Yeah. When I discovered that I first heard that term before empath was in my consciousness. That for me just sort of gave me the excuse or the reason for being who I am and why I am.
Yeah.
And that to me was like, I'm home. I'm not alone. I'm not an alien. There's other people. And so I really gravitated towards being a highly sensitive person. And I started writing about being a highly sensitive person. I looked into her research. She has all this amazing brain research. It's basically a sensory processing sensitivity is what highly sensitive people have. That's the technical scientific term. We have sensory processing sensitivity where we're a little more acutely aware, and we feel things on a much deeper level than people who don't have sensory processing sensitivity. We feel it deeper. It's almost like the volume has turned up in the world. Yeah. Somebody turned up the volume and it's a little louder. It's a little more like in your face. Yes,
right.
Yeah, right. So that's what being a highly sensitive person is like. And then there was something missing for me still, because I've always felt this really strong sense that there's another higher being, force, entity, soul, divine source, whatever you want to call it. I always felt like there's this something else. There's this like mystical, magical something, ethereal, I don't know what it is, spiritual, but it's something else that lives in me and through everyone else. And being just a sensitive person explained my sensitivities, but it didn't quite explain that part of me. And so I was still on a quest to figure out, well, what's this part, And I don't know if you remember the old series, Star Trek Next Generation.
I never really got into Star Trek, but I read that passage. I want you to share that because that's kind of cool.
Oh, yeah. So there's Deanna Troi is one of the characters in Star Trek The Next Generation. I used to love that show.
Yeah.
She's an empath. That's what they call her, an empath. Oh. And I used to watch that show growing up, but I never really connected. But her and Data were always my favorite characters. So Data was an android who didn't feel any emotion whatsoever.
Right.
And Deanna Troi was an empath who felt everyone's emotions.
Oh.
So I think it's kind of interesting and ironic that those are my two favorite characters. I'm going to let a psychologist get into my head one day and figure that out. But, right. But Deanna Troi was an empath, and what she did was she sensed other people's energies and emotions, and not that she could read their minds, but she could sense their energy. So they brought her on, if there was negotiation, so that they could use her insights as to what she feels is going on, behind the scenes underneath this other person's energy. So she's called an empath.
So she kind of represented someone who has really stood in her power with it, though. Like she was very good at it and kind of objective, maybe. And
yes,
able to read things that were useful.
Yes, definitely. And they did have quite a few scenes where it overpowered her.
Oh,
someone else's emotions. She did have quite a few scenes where she emotionally was overpowered, but of course she always like rose out of it, and she always figured out her way. But she was very much like a trained empath. And then also recently there was a Marvel, the Avengers, Guardians of the Galaxy. They came out with another character. I can't remember her name, but she's an empath as well. That's what her title. And so the word empath, there's no scientific evidence of being an empath, or yet that we know of, but the word empath derives from science fiction movies and spiritual literature, but it's not scientifically based. So when I discovered the word empath and I started doing research, and I was like, oh, there's people out in the world calling themselves empaths, not just on TV or in movies. And then I started researching about that. I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense to me, because empath is, because it's not science-based, of course, it's hard to, there's no one authority over it. It's almost like if you want to talk about being highly sensitive, the authority, because the person who discovered this neurological trait is Elaine Aron. But as an empath, there's no one authority that like dominates that that word or the description of being an empath. And so to me, it was much more magical and mystical, and it sort of just blended in with this whole spiritual, otherworldly part of myself that made total sense to me.
Nice.
Yeah.
So Tree, I didn't mention this to you, but I don't know if you've ever heard of Dr. David Hawkins.
Yes.
Have you read Power versus Force?
No.
Or okay.
I will.
So he's a teacher. He's a highly enlightened, like literally enlightened teacher, and studied consciousness. And his consciousness research could absolutely kind of quantify empaths and what's going on with the empath through consciousness calibrations. So if you get to, I highly recommend him, because your level of consciousness is going to rise because he puts everything into context. So what you're talking about, the spiritual domain is above science. So science is in like the 400s in consciousness calibrations. And when you break through the linear mind, you get into the spiritual domain, which is of higher consciousness, which is kind of what you're talking about, which is not necessarily understandable because our world is still kind of science-based, but you're saying, you know what, I recognize there's more to it. And that's like a spiritual gateway to recognize there's spirit beyond the mind. So just wanted to throw that in there. You're onto something, and that would be helpful to you to kind of check it out.
That's great. I definitely will.
It's cool stuff. All right.
Yeah.
So what's the most, with the people that you've seen, is there a common problem that's really stands out, like the big, oh my God, I got to help with this one? Or is it really a whole bunch of things that come together?
Yeah, I think it's a bunch of things that come together. There are, I've come to know, when I've been talking to my clients and groups and my readers, I've created this 4 stages. I've just sort of put people in 4 stages. I know none of us likes to be boxed in and categorized,
Right.
but I created this 4 stages of awakening. And I notice when I talk to clients, when I talk to people, the words that they say and their mentality and their vibration that I can't explain, but I can just feel. But their vibration, I feel like they are in certain stages of their awakening, emotional awakening growth, evolution. So depends on who I'm talking to.
Yep.
If I'm, for the stage, there would be first and second stage, most of them are just so emotionally overwhelmed. They're just absorbing everyone's emotions. And that's just common among most of them. They're just absorbing everyone's emotions. They don't know what to do. Life is so hard. There's sorrow in the world, and they watch the news, and then they go crazy for 2 days. They have a news hangover, and they have to lie in bed for 2 days, which I totally get because it's all bad.
Yeah, it's not ideal.
It's not, yeah. So for people who are in the first 2 stages, the teaching is different than the people who are in the latter 2 stages of their evolution, because the latter 2 stages, they've learned how to manage and understand their emotions. They're not living in fear anymore of what's going to happen to them. I can't have all these people around me because there's so much energy. They're no longer living in that space.
Oh, nice.
And there are commonalities, but it all depends on which stage, which stage you're in.
Okay. So I noticed on your website you have two interesting opportunities for people. I think one of them had to do with a morning action.
Oh,
Could you
yeah.
share one of those? Was it, and what was the other one? There was 7 something.
The grounding techniques.
Yes, thank
Yeah.
you. I couldn't find it again this morning. I'm like, I know I saw this. All right. I'm wondering if you can share one grounding technique, and then if you go to Tree's website, you can get the rest of them. And then one of your morning actions is kind of interesting too. If you could share that with us today.
Sure. So I think the easiest grounding technique, and this is just if you're out in the world and maybe you're in New York City and you're in the city and there's all these people and it's just too overwhelming and you're feeling energies and emotions. Well, let me share 2. Can I share 2 grounding techniques?
You can do whatever you want, honey. This is the free for all.
They're both my favorites and they work equally well. It depends on where you are. So like if you're standing or even if you're sitting, out in the world somewhere, but it really helps when you're standing and you're walking. I call it planting your feet. So you basically, you firmly plant your feet on the ground, both of them, and put your energy onto your feet. And what I like to do is imagine, because we're standing on an earth, right? This powerful, magnificent, mysterious thing that we're like, how is this floating? Of course, there's scientific reasons why it's just there,
right,
floating in the world. But
I still find it fascinating too. I'm like, I can't even believe we exist. I think that's pretty amazing.
Seriously, it's amazing. And this earth it's regenerating itself constantly. We don't have anything to do with that. This earth does it on its own. It's at a certain proximity to the sun and the moon. If it's just half an inch off, we're dead. Like we're just going to explode. So how does it's just magical. So what I like to do is plant my feet firmly on the ground and imagine that I have this power and force that's coming from the earth uprising, this energy that's rising into your feet. And then we can take the energy of the earth rather than take in the energy of the people around us. And this helps if there's somebody in your face yelling at you or criticizing you, whether it's a parent or a sibling or, whoever, a partner, a spouse, if they're standing at you, criticizing you or yelling at you or whatever they're doing, it really helps to firmly plant your feet on the ground, take in the energy from the earth and allow that Mother Nature to rise up in you rather than soaking in the energy from the external. And it's just a visualization and imagination technique, but it really works. And I've had a lot of people tell me it works.
Yes.
And so it doesn't make things go away. It doesn't make that person go away, but it does make you not react to that person or, the energies that you're receiving in the way that maybe you used to and may not feel good about after. So we're going to take the energy of the earth rather than taking in the energies of other people. So the earth is always there. It's not going to go anywhere. You're always going to have your feet planted on the earth at some point. So we can always use that. Another grounding technique I like to do is touching your tips. So your tips of your fingers.
Yeah.
And basically and nobody needs to even see it. So if you're at a party and there's so many people and it's overwhelming, you can just touch your tips or just touch. That's all you need to do. You don't have to go we don't need to do it out in public. I'm just showing you on the camera, but you can do it with your hands in your pocket. You can do it with your hands by your side. And it's really, you're grounding yourself to yourself. So when you touch your tips consciously, you're remembering that you are you and this world is out in this world. So the people who may be bothering you or the experience that may be happening, it's still out there. So it sort of like gets you into your own body and in your own self-identity so that you just remember, I'm me, I'm not them. I don't need to absorb their emotions. And it just sort of like anchors you and grounds you in a way. I used to walk around and it used to look like I was playing piano all the time because when I was younger, I don't know how I discovered it when I was a kid. I used to do this all the time. And people would think I was playing like, the air piano or something.
Oh, yeah.
It was just my way of coping with the world. I just touched my tips. And I recently had a lady who was very anxious when she would go over bridges. She had a fear of bridges. And so when she and her husband were in a car, they have to go over a bridge every single day. I don't know if they lived in San Francisco or not, but every time she had to go over a bridge, which was quite often, she would get really nervous. And a lot of anxiety would rise. and she tried my touching your tips thing. And she said immediately, like, it helped. She wasn't cured of her anxiety, but it helped her to get over that bridge with a little more calm and a little more peace. And so, I mean, I love when people write to me and tell me those things, because it's such a little thing.
Yeah.
You know, anybody can touch your tips all the time, and you always have your fingers. So you don't need any special tools. Those are two of my favorite grounding techniques, because I find that they work a lot for other people as well.
Well, the minute I did this, Tree, I started to feel the energy running through my feet.
Oh, nice.
I totally felt it. And there's this great book called Hand Mudras. I don't know if you're familiar with that book.
Yes.
And I've been doing this my whole life. Like, I just sit like this, and I just do it naturally. Like you're talking, you just naturally did this. And I naturally did this. And when I discovered the hand mudra thing, this is a balancing all of the chakras. It balances all the chakras. I'm like, oh, that's interesting. So even this is enough for me. I mean, it's doing what you're saying. It brings you present into your own, like, okay, this is me.
Mm-hmm.
Cool. All right.
Yeah.
How about a morning action technique?
Yep. So for me, my mornings are sacred. Like, as a sensitive person and a sensitive soul who takes in the whole world, once I get out of my house, I'm dealing with the world. And so before I understood energy and emotions, I used to, get up late, go to work, rush to get to work, put on your makeup, have your coffee, run out the door, get to work or wherever you need to go. And I didn't really ground myself in the morning. I had 8 full hours where my spirit was grounded and my body was rested. But then I just like hit the ground running and I just go. And then I'd come home at the end of the day and be so exhausted because I just never anchored myself to even begin with. And so I feel like mornings are so important. I wake up early every morning at 4 a.m., but I don't feel
That's
like,
early.
yeah, I don't feel like people need to do that. You can still wake up, just give yourself 10, 15 minutes extra in the morning so that you're not rushing. But you can do anything in the morning that makes you feel grounded. So whether it's journaling, saying good morning world, and writing a stream of consciousness, what Julia Cameron does, just, stream of consciousness, just write whatever. Or you can connect to whatever your divine source is, whatever your flow is, your God, to connect to that. You can take a bath. I take a sensory bath. If I have enough time in the morning, I'll take a sensory bath, which is putting on the candles, and I actually focus on the physical feeling of my body going into the water. You put your face in the water and you can hear your heartbeat. So I listen, it's all the 5 senses. So I'm getting in touch with my physical body, not just taking a bath, getting in this bath and getting out, but it's a very conscious experience. And then I'll put on my classical music, and I'm just absorbing myself in all the sensories. And then I can get up and basically, so any morning action that you can do, whether it's petting your dogs, I love to pet my dogs in the morning. It doesn't have to be complicated. It can be very, very simple. Just spend 10 minutes and do nothing except pet your dogs or pet your cat, or, take a sensory bath, or turn off all the lights and take a dark shower. That's really nice too. Yeah. So any of these actions that you can do, the whole idea is really to allow yourself those 10, 15 minutes or more, 5 minutes, whatever you can, to just sort of anchor yourself and get grounded in your day and grounded in yourself, so that when you walk out, you can carry that groundedness with you out into the world, because we all know the world is so busy and everybody's just bombarding you with things. So we all know how that is, but you can bring that centeredness into the world with you, and constantly, if you're having a anxious moment during the day, you can consciously remember that morning that you had in the bathtub, and remember what it was like to have your heart hear your heart beating, and it just sort of anchors you back in, and then you can keep going.
Nice.
Yeah.
So, Tree, do you have a yoga practice by chance?
I do. I was doing vinyasa flow for quite a while, and then I moved, and so my favorite instructor was at this yoga place, and
nice.
2 hours away, so I don't go anymore. I do it on my own. I just try to remember the flow of it. I love, every once in a while when I'm doing this and I'm standing up. I'm just standing in tree pose, just talking to people, just not my arms, but just my legs. Nobody else can see because you can't see down, but I'm just standing in tree pose, especially when I'm doing an interview where I'm maybe really nervous, or I just feel there's a lot of people on because it's a live call. I just sort of, lift up my leg in the tree pose, and it just sort of helps anchor me.
Yes.
Yeah.
Well, I've really come to grasp how significant like hatha yoga and doing poses is for grounding.
Yes.
Like grounding the body. And I've had problems with grounding for a long time until I knew it. I'm like, oh my God, I need help. But I started to watch like a chakra yoga series on Gaia.
Mm-hmm.
She talks about she does one just for the root chakra, for the grounding. I'm like, oh, I get it. So it's kind of fun to understand that that's another element that, hatha is kind of physical, but you kind of need it to hold those poses, and you really start to feel the grounding again in the body, which is helpful. So just wanted to toss that one over there.
Yeah.
All right, Tree.
Yes, I love yoga. I'm glad you brought that up.
Okay, good. I think it's helpful. Another aspect of it that can help you if you're not doing, hatha is kind of physical, but I think, on occasion, throwing in like a tree pose requires you to be present and grounded to hold that in a big way. And if you can learn to hold it and not even move, you're just like, okay, I think I'm grounded here. Could be a good indicator. All right, my dear, I want to talk about your Shift Network event that's coming up on Saturday, September 14th. This is 2019 for those of you who are hearing this after this date. But it's a huge honor and opportunity for Tree to be a part of the Shift Network faculty. And Tree, do you want to tell us about this? So it's like a 1-hour webinar to introduce you. And we don't want to give away the webinar. We want you to come and see the webinar. And it's, what time is it, Tree?
Pacific? It's 10 a.m. Pacific.
10 a.m. Pacific, this Saturday, September 14th, 2019. So give us a little hint as to what people can expect from this. And if you miss it, people that are listening or viewing right now, you can always register to listen to the recording for quite some time. So maybe 30 to 60 days after, you can still have access to it. So it's fun to check it out. So Tree, why don't you tell us a little about, what's it called? Do you remember? I can tell you if you forget.
It's called Finding Freedom as an Empath.
Thank you.
So I talk about the 4 stages of emotional awakening, which I briefly mentioned.
Oh, yes.
I actually go into a little more detail into each of those stages. So I feel like when you can know which stage you're in, you not only understand what's happening in your world, why things are coming at you, and why you're reacting certain ways. It also gives you compassion for where you are, because you can understand, oh, it's just a stage. It's almost like a baby learning to walk. There are certain stages there. First they have to learn to crawl, and then they have to learn to walk, and then they can learn to run. You can't just expect a baby who hasn't crawled to start running. And so when we expect ourselves to be better because we think we're more spiritually advanced, or we should be more because we've done so much work on ourselves, we should know better. We shouldn't have reacted that way. When we beat ourselves up for doing things like that, I think it's really helpful to understand, oh, this is just a stage. This is where I am. That's the stage that I am. And I'm going to move out of it, just like I was when I was a baby and I moved out of crawling and walking and now I can run. I think it's the same. So it brings a lot of compassion and self-acceptance where you are. Also helps you understand maybe another empath in your life or a sensitive person in your life, where they're coming from and why they're not better, or why they're not, more conscious of where they are.
Right.
Yeah, I hate saying that word, but we all, I think, and I'm like, oh, I should be better than this. I know, I've been studying this, but we tend to beat ourselves up. And so I think knowing where we are in the 4 stages, and I describe 4 stages, who each individual one is. So I talk about the 4 stages, and in that you can derive, or the audience can derive where they are, and also gives you hope and knowing where you can go. And I personally believe not where you can go, but where you will go, whether you want to or not. It's just our evolution, whether it's this lifetime or another lifetime, you're going to go there because you're an empath. Sorry. but when you know the 4 stages and you know the 4th stage, you're like, oh, of course I want to go there, because there's the freedom right there.
Yeah.
And so it helps. So we'll talk about the 4 stages. I also give 2 energy shifting exercises. So I'll teach one exercise where if you're feeling painful emotion, sadness or anger or sorrow, I can teach you to move out of that very quickly within seconds.
Oh, nice.
It's just I call it the 4-step shift from painful to powerful. So it moves you from a place of pain to a place of power. I'll walk through that in this interview, and it's an interview with Stephen Dinan, by the way, who's the founder of the Shift Network. So it was a really fun interview. He's great.
Okay. He's
and
good.
Then,
He knows his stuff.
Yeah, he's great. And then we also talk. The other technique I teach is in the interview is getting rid of your old stuck energies. So we all have old stuck energies from our past. I talk about what mine was and how I moved out of it. And it's just, maybe you have the same repeating patterns. Maybe your mom was physically abusive and now you're in relationships where you're being physically abused, or it's just something that sort of followed you around and you feel like you should be more advanced than that. You should know better because you do, but you're still stuck in that, and it keeps bringing up all that past stuff. Yep. And so I feel like that's just old trapped energy that was never really dealt with. We deal with things from a psychological standpoint, and a lot of us have therapists, but I don't feel like we deal with things from an energetic standpoint. So it's one thing to know psychologically why we're holding on to all this and how to let it go by talking, about it and doing things. But I feel like there's also an energetic stuckness. And so this technique that I also do in this interview will help you move out of that, dissolve some of that stuckness so that you can get out of those old past stories and patterns that you keep repeating.
They're such a bore, Tree. That's all I got to say. Those old stories are such a bore.
I know.
Welcome our audience to listen in, because if you're going to get some tips on how to let go of stuck stuff, that's huge. Because I still have stuck stuff. I'm like, I keep like, are you kidding me? I'm not done. I'm like, really? I'm done.
Right. I'm the same way.
I know.
Yep.
Cool. So that's a worthy, and tell us again the name of it.
It's called Finding Freedom as an Empath.
Okay, cool. And you can find freedom whether you're an empath or not, because we all still have this pattern garbage, stuckness that we want to get rid of. So anyone is welcome to join this. You don't have to be an empath to do it, but it's certainly helpful if you are not aware of this terminology and you're like, oh my God, someone understands me, then for sure you're going to want to check it out. And then, Tree, we're not going to give it away, but if you attend the webinar, Tree has created, we don't want to leave you high and dry after a webinar. So it's an intro into her 7-week course. Do you have a name for that, Tree? We're not going to give that away.
It's really long because I work with the Shift Network, and it was something about the awakening for sensitive souls.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, and it goes into further depth about the 4 stages.
Okay, good. Well, we're not going to give that away. You got to attend the event. Check out Tree and the interview with Stephen Dinan, the founder of the Shift Network. He's always a good interviewer. And I hope you found this enjoyable and helpful. And Tree, I thank you for joining us today. And share your website again.
It's findyourinnerhappy.com.
Okay. And the name of your course that's available there?
Finding Freedom as an Empath.
Nice. I saw you did a love summit too.
I did.
That's cool. I want you to share that real quick, because I know everyone cares about relationships, and
yes,
guys, of course, want love.
Right. And it was actually my first summit that I hosted. So I was not a speaker. I just did it. It was called the Soulful Love Summit, because I find that a lot of us, we don't want just a relationship. We don't want to just meet somebody and, oh, I'm in a relationship. We want like the relationship.
Meaningful. Right.
Yes, we want the deep, 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 soulful relationship. And so I created this course called the Soulful Love Summit, and I invited 20 experts to come in, because I'm just an expert in my own relationship, but I that's not my thing. Like, that's not what I teach. That's not what I've studied. So I decided, well, I can't really teach. I can show you what I did to create my God man who's in my life right now, but I can't really talk much about relationships in general, because I don't really know.
Yeah.
That's not my expertise. And so I invited all these 20 experts who do know about that and who do teach this, and they're love coaches and relationship experts and speakers and New York Times bestselling authors. And so they came in and just, I interview one person at a time. And so we have 20 experts talking about all the way from the very beginning of how to date if you're shy and awkward, how to date if you're sensitive and introverted and you hate dating, all the way from there to somebody who may already be in a relationship and wants to keep it or wants to make it deeper and more soulful. Like they don't want to leave their partner, but it's not quite fulfilling them. So it's called the Soulful Love Summit. It's how to find and keep deep, lasting love. So it takes you all the way from the very beginning to, I even interview people who are, relationship experts who are in relationships, and we talk about their marriage and how, they sort of like, whatever their techniques or tactics are to build their marriage and make that a more soulful relationship.
Nice. So lots of goodies on Tree's website. And I have two more things I wanted to talk about. The first one is, I love that you made a mention about doing the whole light bubble thing, this protection of light. That's always bugged me. I'm like, first of all, I didn't feel right. I'm like, that's kind of reinforcing I'm a victim and I have to be protected.
Yes.
And I would like to bring this topic up because there's a lot of people that suggest you put this white light around you. I'm like, if you're grounded, you don't feel the need for that. I can tell you that.
Yes.
I don't know if that's your experience, Tree, or what your feedback is on that, but I've always felt it's like perpetuating victimhood.
Yes, I completely, absolutely 100% agree. I think when we teach people to set these protective light bubbles, invisible force fields, energetic force fields, we are perpetuating the fear that they're living from. So all of that protection, you have to imagine that that protection is coming from a mentality of fear. I need to be protected.
Right.
So because I'm not strong enough. And I get that. And I talk about it in the 4 stages too.
Okay.
The first 2 stages, those techniques actually help, but it'll just help you to a certain level. At some point, you got to let it go. You got to let that fear go. At some point, you got to step into your own power and learn new things, not just protective mechanisms. It's almost like, I know we're running out of time, but in that movie, The Matrix, which is a very violent movie, but they talk about Neo, where he's learning to become this being, right? And he says to his teacher, are you teaching me I can dodge bullets? And the teacher's like, no, I'm teaching you that you won't have to when you're ready. So at first he learns how to dodge bullets, which is what I think we're doing when we're doing these, we're dodging bullets. We're dodging all these energetic bullets coming at us. And that is protective. That's coming out of fear. But eventually we've got to move out of that. And we won't have to dodge these energetic bullets anymore because we can stand firm and we know who we are. So I completely agree with you. I think there's a time and place, depending on who you're talking to maybe teach those just to help them manage where they are until they can keep growing and get out of that place where you're not living in fear.
Yeah, I do. It does remind me that I was there, and to have compassion for wherever you're at. I was there. And I did do the light bubble thing for a while, but then I'm like, this doesn't feel right anymore.
Yeah.
I didn't need it. And I watched I study consciousness. So when I watch movies, I can see what's going on in consciousness in the movie. And when I went to see Wonder Woman, I don't know if you saw that.
Yes.
Pretty amazing.
Yes.
Wonder Woman is standing. She is from a very high level of consciousness that she's operating from, way beyond courage. I mean, she's courageous beyond doubt. But she's aware that the bullets aren't going to touch me. I'm operating from love. You realize she's operating from a very high level of love and understanding. It's kind of awesome. But that's like Wonder Woman in that movie. I'm like, whoa, she showed me something. I'm like, okay, she's operating way beyond, she's courageous beyond, she's beyond courage because she has a high understanding. So, all right, one last thing, and I got to go. What's up with Stick Girl? Your muse.
Oh, Stick Girl. So Stick Girl is a figment of my imagination, which I'm not sure. Maybe she's not, maybe she's real. I don't know. But she's just a little stick figure that I draw. And if you go to my website, you'll see her all over the place. I use her in my courses to help, because the courses are so heavy. We talk about very deep stuff, and we bring up a lot of deep stuff in my courses. It's about emotions, right? And so in my courses, I like to use Stick Girl and draw her and have her show examples of moving out of certain places, because it sort of lightens the load a little bit. It makes it a little more playful, even though we are working on deep stuff. But I don't want it to be so deep where we're just forgetting that life is about play and joy and lightness. So we can do all this. So Stick Girl, I bring her in, but she's just a little stick figure that I draw. I I'm sorry if you think I'm crazy, but I do feel like she's real. Like I actually see her around, and that's how I get to draw her, because I can see her. And so I'm just transferring onto paper what I see with my eyes. But she helped me when I was going through a lot of pain back in the day. She helped me get through it. She was always there for me, this little figment of my imagination, call her an imaginary friend, whatever you want to call it. A lot of people who are my readers who follow me have said, oh my gosh, I was feeling so down today, and then I saw Stick Girl running across the desk. I'm like, yes!
That's awesome.
Or you're crazy too. We're both crazy.
That's so great. I love that. Well, I have I follow like Native American power animal stuff.
Yes.
When animals show up like a lot, I'm like, okay, I got to go see what they're telling me. It's a support. You know, shamanic practitioners have power animals. Yours is a stick girl.
That's true. That's very true. Yeah.
All right, Tree, we got to wrap it up here. Thank you again. And all of our viewers and listeners, if you enjoy what's going on here, we invite you to subscribe to our podcast at highvibetriberadio.com and our YouTube channel at highvibetribetv.com. And we're going to share Tree's event, and we're going to have a page with our interview and a blog post, and share whatever Tree and I may continue with the relationship here, and we'll share her courses or whatever, but we'll always have links to her at the mindbodyspiritnetwork.com/interview-tree-Franklyn, and that's TREE, Tree, and her last name is FRANKLYN for all of you listeners. So interview-tree-Franklyn at the mindbodyspiritnetwork.com. Thank you again, Tree, and our listeners. Comments, questions, we'd love to have you share this if we're having fun with us, or if you're not having fun with us, let me know why and what we can do to improve it. Thanks, Tree. Have a great week.
Thank you, Liz.